Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy full moon in Virgo. So excited to see your faces as everyone's logging in. Hello. While we are getting ready to get started, I know that I definitely wanted to take some spacious time meditation. And as it's the full moon, and we've been working a lot with themes of nurture and more of that yin, heavy, deep energy, I invite you to get pillows. Make your setup really nice so that when you're sitting, you don't have to sit with a lot of force to sit up straight and that you're supported by the area around you. If you have your favorite tea, you may want to grab that now. Maybe set the space around you. Our brain likes to have almost little doorways between experiences so that it can know, okay, this is a new time to step away from the list, the doing, the thinking, and step into that receptive energy. So by taking the time to just create a little cocoon of love and tenderness around yourself may allow you to explore a bit deeper or with a bit less resistance as we start to go through the themes for tonight. While we're waiting for everyone to log in, I wanted to say thank you so much for the donations and also just for your energetic presence being here. It has been a year almost since we began this adventure of COVID and the coronavirus. And through these workshops, we've really been able to give back to the pond, which I know the pond has been such a home and a refuge and a place of stability for a lot of people in my life, as well as for myself. And I know for Katie. So just thank you so much for being a part of helping us keep doing the work and helping us show up. And by showing up for us, you remind us to show up for ourselves, which I know I always appreciate. Katie and I started these circles a little over a year ago. We really wanted to start tapping into the natural rhythms of the world and form bonds and relationships that revolved around healthy things. And so this time monthly, we carved a set aside to start actually mindfully looking back on our life and start to look for the themes and the energetic undercurrents that kind of course through everybody's experience and see where we can find similarities that will help us understand our own stories and gain a little bit more clarity, as well as to see how different perspectives and people taking different modalities and approaches can come to some really enlightening perspectives and ideas. So this is a time where we all start to do a little bit more of what in yoga is called swadhyaya, that self-study, taking our gaze from the external world, from the people around us, the job, the identity, and looking inwards to, well, what is my experience? All of this I'm doing, what is it giving me? What is me? You know, the questions just go on and on and on. So I thank you so much for being here. Again, if you've just arrived, please take the time to maybe grab a journal, a pen, a little candle to, get the mood going and say thank you for showing up. I really appreciate that, and I hope you appreciate it for yourself as well. And Katie will be taking us over and getting us started. So thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Anna. And thank you to everyone that is here live with us today, as well as anyone who's watching the recording of this workshop. Just know that if you weren't able to make it here in person, or I guess I should say on Zoom, then we definitely still feel your energy and presence with us right now. So I wanted to start us out today with just a really short meditation because I don't know about anyone else in this group right now, but I've definitely felt this swirl of energy throughout this entire week. And as part of understanding the moon cycles and becoming more in line with the natural rhythms and patterns of our universe, it is a tendency around the full moon to have this flurry of energy come within us. And a lot of times it's not even our own energy, but those around us. And it's this energy that we're absorbing, or almost like this stickiness that's attached to us that we can't always shake. And so a good way to reset and clear the mind and clear the energetic space is meditation. So if you're already set up for that, find your comfortable seat. If not, you can grab any props that you'd like and just get yourself set up. We're only going to be here for a few moments. It's not a long seated meditation, so no worries if you don't have anything nearby. But I just want you to sit up nice and tall through the spine, relaxing the shoulders down and finding your both sitting bones rooted down either into the earth or into your props. Either softening the gaze or closing the eyes. Beginning to take deep breaths. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the nose. Creating this natural rhythm with your breath. Not forcing or trying to take the largest breath, but just allow the natural breath to take over here. And just notice how your breath naturally is. Noticing the quality of your breath. The temperature of your breath. The fullness of your breath. Begin to sense into the parts of your body that are grounding down into the earth. Notice here if you have a tendency to lean forward or maybe backwards, and just find somewhere like the sweet spot right in the middle. And with all this awareness of the physical body, take another moment or so to scan through your energetic body. Just noticing anything that you may have brought with you to this moment. Notice any residue from maybe a situation or experience that you had earlier today. And is there a way that you could just place this thought, this feeling, or this emotion off to the side? Feeling the quality of spaciousness. And allowing a sense of clarity to wash over your energetic body. Take a deep cleansing breath in and a deep releasing breath out. And slowly open the eyes. Welcome back, everyone. So I know that sometimes meditation can feel as if it's hard to get to this place of spaciousness, and it may only be a flickering moment where you feel this essence of clarity or spaciousness. So if that rings true for you, if you have what's known as monkey mind or puppy mind, and it's hard to drop in just a quick 4 or 5 minute meditation, just know that you're not alone. And actually, with lots of practice and consistency, it over time gets easier. So if this was your first meditation, or if this is early on in your meditation journey and you feel like your mind was just racing that whole time, that's actually, you're right where you're supposed to be. That is part of the journey. So I wanted to first go over some of the energetic things that are going on right now in our universe, since that seems really in line with the full moon and what we tend to offer here in these circles. So I'd like to share my screen with you all. And so today we are talking about the hunger moon. And for those of you that were not with us last year, this is our second year that we're talking about the hunger moon. And we're also resting in Virgo. The full moon is resting in Virgo. And so for those of you new to astrology, just know that we're going to use a lot of astrological terms that if they're new to you, if they seem foreign, just let some of this wash over you. And a lot of the meanings behind these astrological terms are going to be a lot easier to understand once we dive into it a little deeper. So with the full moon in Virgo, the sun is also in Pisces. So we have some opposing energetic forces happening right now. And that may explain some of the things that we've been experiencing over the last few weeks. And we're going to actually get into some of that today in our workshop. So first, I'd like to talk about some of the qualities of Virgo for those of you that are new to astrology, or maybe who don't know a whole lot about the Virgo sign. So the Virgo is actually represented by the Virgin. And we'll go in more depth on what that means in just a little bit, but just so that you have this picture in your mind of the sign or the qualities of Virgo, very practical. So I know some Virgos in my life. Actually, my boyfriend is a Virgo, so I live with one, and he is a very practical person, and he always thinks things through. He is very much someone that needs to have a plan, and he likes to make lists and follow through with the lists and check things off and check in with people if they're part of the list. You know what I mean? He's very much he's very much a critical thinker. And so with that comes a lot of rational thinking and a lot of ability to look at things from a perspective of how is this going to play out in real life? Like, what's the reality of this? Whereas some of us can be a lot more dreamers and imagine and dream out these awesome ideas, but we maybe like don't follow through with them. The Virgo qualities are the kind of people, they may not have the dream or the idea, but they're definitely going to follow through with it. So it's interesting that we are resting in this energy right now, because after just, coming into this new year, and a lot of us, set New Year's resolutions or have vision boards or what have you. So a lot of us are in this phase where we're 2 months into the year. We may be reevaluating our goals for the year or our vision for the year, especially since there's so much unknowns still in our lives. It's hard to really plan that far out. So it's interesting that we're sitting here in this Virgo energy, because we could be easily swept up in this list of to-dos and trying to set clear goals and visions, and maybe we could be a little hard on ourselves if we're not reaching these goals and visions fast enough, right? So that's one thing about Virgos, is that they can be somewhat impatient. I don't have that on this list, but I know that for a fact. They're hardworking people to a fault, and they have a tendency to overwork and spread themselves thin and burn out because they're so attached to the goals or this list of things to do. So if anyone can relate to that, just know that you're not alone, because this is some energy that is in a collective field right now. And it may not be your own energy that you're feeling. You may actually be feeling the collective energy. So I like to talk about this because sometimes it's hard to separate this idea of what we're feeling and what is not our feelings, but we're just absorbing from this collective energetic field. For those of you that maybe aren't on board with the idea of collective energy, I do invite you to do some research on it. There is a lot of scientific information out there that talks about energetic fields and the collective energy, and that's actually how the whole idea of Reiki or pranic healing can even exist. So it's all connected. And I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but for anyone that's interested in the topic that wants to talk to me more about it, find me outside of this workshop. So beyond just being dependable and practical, Virgos are also super honest. So I really like to think of this as a reminder for me to continue to return back to my truth and what I'm trying to align with my core beliefs and my core values, right? So maybe, for example, we set some goals for ourselves at the beginning of the year that weren't in line with our truth or our core values. And now it can be a time to reevaluate that or revisit some of those ideas or goals to see how we can shift them to be more in line with what's going to serve us and our best interests, which will then serve the interests of everyone around us. Because once we start taking care of ourselves, that's really when we can start taking care of others. So to sum it up here, how can we be more okay with letting go of the pressure to accomplish and to have these to-do lists and to reach these big goals that we have, right? How can we be okay with maybe taking a pause and practicing a little bit of self-care? Because that's one thing that Virgos aren't always good at, is practicing self-care. A lot of times when they're out of balance, that's when you know, because they're not doing the work to keep themselves fueled to keep going. And that's something that I see often. So, and it's something I can relate to myself. So beyond the Virgo being in our full moon, we also, the sun is in Pisces. So I don't know how many of you are Pisces on this Zoom meeting or whoever's watching the replay, but this is your season right now. We're entering your season. So hello, Pisces, my empathetic, compassionate, loving people. It's actually really funny. I have a tattoo on my back that is supposed to be two koi fish that kind of looks like these two fish here, where it's head to tail. And I drew this picture years ago, and I wanted the tattoo on my back. I was 18 years old and I thought I knew what I wanted. So I get this tattoo of two koi fish on my back, and it ends up looking like a Pisces. And I'm a Leo, but the funny thing is I'm a Pisces rising. So I didn't know that at the time, but I ended up with this Pisces looking tattoo on my back. And then years later, I found out I'm a Pisces rising. So part of me thinks that there's like some synchronicities that happen there. And I just laugh and chuckle every time I see the Pisces symbol. So anyways, Pisces qualities are very much in line with self-care practices, right? So if you're being more in line with your empathy, with your compassion, your creative self, your ability to let go of the to-do list, to let go of the goals and these practical ways of thinking, and jump more into your dreamlike state, your imagination, your childlike, playful side, right? It's just interesting. Like, that's what I'm saying from the beginning of this workshop. We're kind of in this opposing energetic time where you've got this very type A personality energy from Virgo meets empathetic dreamer like Pisces, and we're somewhere swirling in between, exiting out of, and this is the next thing I want to talk about, this airy Aquarius season, right? So here I am, like, I don't know about you guys, but I was feeling so scattered this week. I had the worst time remembering what I was supposed to do, where I'm supposed to go. I was forgetting things left and right. It got so comical at one point that I just had to laugh at myself and just be like, all right, this week I'm just not going to be super efficient, and that's okay. So with that Aquarius energy, we really start to see this mental chatter, right? That's the puppy mind or monkey mind that I was referring to right after our meditation. And this idea of mental chatter can sometimes block us or fog the mind from being able to see clearly and to see what our truth is, to see what it is that maybe we are overdoing in some areas or underdoing in others, right? And so a lot of today's workshop, we're going to be talking about energy moderation. For those of you that are familiar with the term Brahmacharya and the yamas, right? So think about how your energy has been placed over the last 2 months. And I know I asked this question in the email that we sent out earlier today with the Zoom link, the food for thought. You know, I asked you, what are you hungry for in life? You know, what is it that you're trying to push your energy towards? And how has this hunger affected your actions and your thoughts and your emotional well-being? And I asked this question because when we get hungry, and this, okay, I'm going to talk in literal sense here. When we get hungry and our belly is rumbling, isn't it hard to think straight? Does anyone else feel that way? Right? Like, if you're hungry, there's a term called hangry, where you actually get a little irritable and angry because you're so hungry you can't think straight. So with that physical representation of hunger, it actually translates the same way with our desires, with our goals, the things that we're hungry for. What is it that we're trying to eat or consume or achieve, right? What is it that we're trying to take into our lives or become? What is it that we're hungry for? And how is that hunger fogging the mind? Is it a healthy hunger, or is it an overindulgent hunger, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about what the hungers from within, that emotional hunger, or that spiritual hunger, what that means, and how we can really satisfy that. Because I know some of us are trying to do that through resources or sources that do not satisfy hunger and instead actually make you feel more hungry over time. So think of, and I know we talked about this before, I'm not sure how many circles ago, but the hungry ghost is a Chinese Buddhist principle or idea that talks about the unsatiable desire for things that are outside of ourselves. So I'm going to say that again. The hungry ghost is this insatiable desire for things that are outside of ourselves. So in short terms, that's external gratification. And we can find that through a lot of different things. External gratification comes through validation from others, through the pleasures of eating or drinking things like coffee or soda or alcoholic beverages. It can come from purchasing something new that's exciting, from taking a trip somewhere new and adventurous, right? So you're starting to understand now these external avenues that we are appearing to be hungry for and that we're yearning for. We want so bad to get to these external things that we're actually missing the whole point or the whole idea of how we can really fill this hunger. So what I like to think of as actually satisfying hunger is, okay, another physical representation, mindful eating. So, and let me actually just stop sharing for now. We'll come back to that in a minute. So, this whole idea of self-care as filling this insatiable hunger is that you're filling your cup, you're filling your body, and you're filling your mind and spirit in a way that it won't just get hungry again in a few minutes, you know? So if you were to sit down and eat your meal so fast, you know, let's say you were so hungry that you sat down and you ate, and then 5 minutes later you're done eating, but everyone else at the table is like just barely scratched the surface of their meal. They're going to eat for the next 30 minutes. And now you're just sitting there watching everyone else eat. And you feel like, oh, well, I'm still hungry. Even though your body isn't physically hungry, your mind is telling you that you're still hungry because you ate so fast that you couldn't actually register that you were full. So then we bring in this idea of mindful eating. And this is actually a really great way for people to overcome overindulgence with food. Me personally, I had to learn the art of mindful eating to overcome an eating disorder. Some people just take up mindful eating because they want to be more connected to their food and to their health and nourishment. And I think that's wonderful. You know, you don't have to be recovering from an eating disorder to start mindful eating. And I actually recommend doing it for anyone. You can do that by simply not looking at your phone during your meal, by slowing down your bites and chewing the food thoroughly and tasting the food and smelling the food and savoring the food and just being present with your food and your meal. And something I like to do in my meals right before I eat is I say a little affirmation about how this food is going to nourish my body. So I'm energetically sending this food into myself without just eating so fast that I don't even remember the meal, right? So how does this relate to this hungry desire or this hunger that we're trying to fill externally, like not talking about food now, but just talking about life in general, right? Well, we can think of the same thing as self-care and mindfulness practices as being able to satisfy the hunger that we feel towards life itself. And we're going to talk a little bit more about mindfulness practices later on in this workshop. And I know that Anna has some really wonderful information that she's going to share with us as well on how we can be more in tune with our energy moderation and with how to even identify where our energy is going and what directions we want to pull it back to and send it to. So I'm actually going to pass it over to Anna now so she can share some thoughts with you on energy moderation and this whole idea of this desire or hunger that we have for life.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Katie. And I just always love how the themes of what's going on in astrology or in you can really find how those threads come throughout your own life. As we have been talking about the full moon, the hunger moon, when I think of hunger, I think of gnawing, or almost like when you're really hungry, that sharp heat and twist that you can feel, almost as if the stomach is digesting itself because it needs so much. And that need to me is a very graspy kind of energy. And what's interesting is that all of us have different things that we hunger for. That could be something we're craving, whether that is a new job, a new relationship, a deeper depth to our relationship, a new way of relating to a parent, um, a new way of relating to our own bodies. These are all things that we desire. But what's at the basis of that desire is really just to feel good. Everything we want because we think it's going to make us feel good. And it's okay to want things, but when it takes a kind of darker turn is when what we start using what we want as a means of putting ourselves down or saying we're not enough or looking at where we are in our journey and judging it based on someone else's. In my meditations of the mat reading today, the quote was really beautiful and read, "There's a part of every living thing that wants to become itself. The tadpole into the frog, the chrysalis into the butterfly, a damaged human being into a whole one. That is spirituality." And so we see that this evolution, this natural cycle of healing, of growth, is nature. Nature inherently is about metamorphosis. It is about these stages of life, the beginning where we're young and we're interacting and we're learning, the middle where we're creating and we're manifesting and we're taking on a more lead role versus um, more of a laid back going with the flow, and then the wisdom years, the end where we are this being of just understanding, hopefully if we've done the work, such a deep understanding of ourselves that we then can mirror to the people in our lives who we love what they need to see. So what's not wrong is that time in the cocoon when the butterfly is growing. But for us as humans, what again becomes wrong is that worry that sets in of, can I do this? Will I be able to do this? Can I handle this? And that's that little energetic blockage that prevents us from letting in what we really want. When you think of where you are, let's say that you're at a job, but you're already feeling really overwhelmed. You're rushing home after work. You're barely keeping up with the groceries. You always have a pile of laundry. You always feel stressed. Even if you want another job, maybe a higher paying job, for most people, higher paying has a connotation of potentially more work and more responsibility. If you're already feeling like you're juggling 18,000 balls and you're dropping them all over the place, why would you want to put a heavier ball into your hands? Do you see how there's kind of this paradox that happens of we want something, but then we can't let ourselves have it because we're not energetically ready to accept it. So paying attention to where our own energy is basically the first step in really being able to take control of our lives and start allowing experiences in that we are saying we want, but potentially, not allowing to happen. And so one of the very first things I'd like us to take a deeper look at is the voice in our head, that incessant worrying. In our last full moon circle, we spoke about childhood and about how in childhood, we have experiences that we then use to start speaking about the world. So these are the stories that make us. When we are a young child and we're experiencing an emotion, when we don't understand what's happening in the body, the pounding heart, the sweating palms, it just gets a label of bad. And in that label of bad, because as children, we perceive the world around I, it's a very narcissistic view when you first start out. You think that that bad is coming from you. So it's putting a story on what's currently happening and looking at what is wrong with me that's creating this. As you start to look back on your childhood, though, and realize maybe what's going on in the people's around you life, you can see, oh, this wasn't about me. Not everybody has had this experience. This isn't necessarily the truth. This was just the truth of my perspective in that moment. So, finding emotional balance. How can we ask for more when it already feels like too much? So, just thinking about what your daily experience of life is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least amount of stress, 10 being the highest, 5 being about a low buzz where you kind of always have something a little bit in the back of your head, but you never quite have disaster. So you find the keys right when you need them, you're leaving on time, but maybe not with a minute to spare. What is the current level of your life right now? And just write that down somewhere in your journal for yourself. And then closing the eyes, if you were to rate yourself, your energetic quality in this moment from a scale of 1 being bad to 10 being great, take about 2 to 3 deep breaths and then write that number down as well. There's no need to judge whatever numbers you're putting down. In the end, it's just numbers. It's just a way of trying to understand ourselves deeper. It doesn't really mean anything beyond the interpretation we're putting on it ourselves. So, beginning to gain power from these stories, from where the seed of worry is planted within us, is to start examining them. So, an example of a story where a child was made to be unsafe could be that whenever a young girl cries, her mother, because they come from a middle class family that's not struggling, says, "You're lucky to have all of this. You're so ungrateful. So many kids are starving over the world. You need to realize that you have everything that you need and be more thankful, and go to your room and take time and calm down and don't mount until you're thankful." So, in that moment, the daughter's perspective is going to feel shut down, that emotions are bad, that her tears are something to be suppressed, that her tears are something that makes someone else uncomfortable. And by relating, so just it's really interesting to look at all these different ways that a child can start to make these connections and then see where in our own lives are we doing that. It's important throughout investigations of these into our own life and past to do it through the eyes of non-judgment and self-compassion, though, because even if we are looking at the experience of a young girl, if we were to change it to the mother's experience, maybe in that moment, the mother was on the verge of crying. And that's what she was saying to herself. Look at this beautiful home you have, your child, the bills are paid. Who are you to be sad when so many are suffering? And so when you start to see that that's so complex that these stories can continue from generations to generations to generations, it allows you to step back and create some spaciousness between your experience and this statement that you've now taken on. What's interesting too is that Virgo, which the full moon is in, is ruled by the house of Chiron, which is the wounded healer from Greek mythology. So he was born a half man, half horse, so a centaur, and his mother abandoned him and was disgusted and ashamed by his appearance. The sun god Apollo and his sister took him in and they raised him and they taught him about archery and nature, and they really allowed his talents to grow. Through this nurturing, he became a tutor and an incredibly wise man, a healer for many. And multiple people throughout Greek mythology actually come to his door in search of wisdom. I do think it's really interesting that in this mythology story, his mother didn't see that seed, that light, that possibility within him. And the sun, which is the sun god, which represents light, which can represent that masculine energy, which masculine is supposed to be the safe space for that feminine energy to step out in. So I love the fact that this masculine bringing to light energy took him in and allowed his natural talents to flow. What's beautiful is that the mythology ends with him actually sacrificing his life for Prometheus, who was the bringer of fire, which allowed humans to flourish, to have transformation, to go from being at war with nature into actually being in a relationship with nature where they could use what's around them to move from survival to actually thriving and experiencing life in a deeper and easier way. So, as Virgo, as in this celestial body, when he sacrifices his life, he's made into a constellation. And so, thinking of that, we can think of how our own wounds, our own very unique childhood experiences that give us these different perspectives, this creates this unique ability in order to connect with others or to see someone's pain. I recently had an experience of being on the beach with my sister, and we were sitting maybe about 10, 20 yards away from another group of people. And in front of us, this dolphin comes up, not even maybe 10 yards away, and for 45 minutes floats back and forth, floats back and forth. And we were the only people that saw, probably because we were the only people that knew to look. And that same thing happens in life. When you have an experience that lends a sensitivity within yourself, you're able to almost sense and feel that sensitivity in others. And then by seeing the sensitivity in them and providing a space the same way Apollo did for Chiron, by providing a safe space for them, you in turn are almost giving back that love, that spaciousness that wasn't given to you when you deserved it most. And so closing the eyes, bringing the hands to the tops of the thighs, we'll begin to investigate our own relationship with worry. As we sit here together, remembering that the intention of meditation is not to make the mind go blank. The intention of meditation is to become aware of when the mind has wandered, to smile at the self through eyes of self-compassion and realize, oh, how strong these worries, these thought patterns are. Come back to the breath, come back to the heart. And it's through that constant self-love, self-awareness that we begin to loosen the chains of worry that bind us. Feeling the hands on the tops of the thighs, begin to deepen the breath. As you inhale, feel the lower belly expand gently, and the chest naturally rises up towards the sky, the stars. As you exhale, the chest lowers and the navel hugs gently back. Inhaling, feel the softness as the torso grows, this natural extension of the spine. Exhale, can you find ease across the shoulders and back? Follow the breath. Inhale deeply, maybe to a count of 4, 2, 3, 4, holding for 2 breaths. 1, 2. Exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2. Exhale for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale in. Hold. Exhale out. And continue following the breath. And every time the mind wanders and you catch it, say thank you, welcome back, and come back to the breath. And bring awareness to the heart. You feel the chest as it expands, as it lowers. Now allow awareness to come to the palms, feeling them pressing against the thighs. Can you sense into the space around the hands? Feel the air against the skin. Come back to the breath if the mind has wandered. Smile and begin again. And taking the right hand to the heart, continue breathing, but feel for your heartbeat. As the chest lifts into the hand, do you feel the spaciousness underneath the palm? Any heat? Keeping the awareness in the heart, allow the hand to raise above the chest just a tiny bit of space. Can you still sense the heartbeat? Can you sense the energy of your own body? There's no right answer here. Just allow the hand to rest above the brilliance of you, the kind, steady beating of your heart, the home of your soul. Allow the hand to lower to the chest, bring the left hand to the top. And just ending with a soft Om to clear the channels of the throat. Inhale first. Exhale through the mouth. Inhale for Om. Om. Release the hands to the thighs. Keep the eyes closed for a brief moment. Take a deep breath in. Exhale through the mouth. Turn the chin to the right side, stacking chin in the direction over the shoulder. Breathe across the front of the chest. Exhale through the mouth. Inhale, coming through center over to the left side, turning the head towards the side of the room. Relax the chin, broaden across the heart. Deep breath in. Exhale, come back through center. Flutter the eyes open. And I'd like you to write down on a number of what you're feeling in this moment. And good doesn't have to mean high energy, it can be calm. But on a scale, has your energy shifted positively or maybe even negatively? In meditation, we can become aware of the internal thoughts that are driving the stories behind us. And they're not always pleasant, to be completely honest, and that's okay. But by being aware of them, we're given this opportunity to begin to choose better and to extend some self compassion of what our experience is. Beautiful. And so, namaste. I'll return this back to Katie. But as we continue these things of Brahmacharya, think about how you feel now. And if it is a good feeling, then maybe allow yourself to invite this practice into your life a little bit more often. Meditation does not have to be this big thing where you set it up and it takes time and you have to sit down and set a timer. Sometimes it can just be closing the eyes, feeling the warmth of your own being and just appreciating that. So I hope over the course of the next month, we all can invite a little bit more spaciousness to allow these moments to happen more often.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was such a beautiful guided meditation for all of us. And I know that I really benefited from that. I do agree that there are times that meditation may leave me feeling more stirred up. And that's usually an opportunity where I journal a little bit more after the meditation, because whatever is being stirred up there is usually something that needs to be expanded on or maybe worked through a little bit more. And that may not happen all at once. It may not happen just through one meditation or through one session of journaling, but you can certainly break through a lot of different layers of baggage, emotional baggage, traumas, thoughts, limiting beliefs, things that happened from childhood, like Anna was describing, through the eyes of a child, how they're taking in their world around them and how that sticks inside of us for years to come. So all of that will come up in meditation. It's not like we just sit here and become this hovering body in this lotus flower shape that at this white light just beaming around us. That's what we see in a lot of photos or images that depict meditation, right? But the reality is that is not the reality. So just know that if you keep showing up consistently to your meditation practice, you'll not only be able to get to know yourself on a deeper level, but you'll also be able to work through some things that maybe have been weighing you down for a long time. And so I really wanted to read a passage from the Yamas and Niyamas by Deborah Adele. And this is a section that talks specifically about Brahmacharya, or energy moderation. And so Brahmacharya literally means walking with God. And for those of you that don't believe in anything spiritual, like the idea of God, I'm not a religious person by any means, and I'm not saying that it's in line with a certain religion, but the idea of the word God is an all-encompassing word that can mean source, nature, just energy outside of yourself, right? So I like to think of God as the highest version of ourselves that we are connected to when doing right work. And so in the Yamas and Niyamas, it says Brahmacharya literally means walking with God, and invites us into an awareness of the sacredness of all of life. This guideline is a call to leave greed and excess behind and walk in this world with wonder and awe, practicing non-excess and attending to each moment as if it were holy. And so what does that mean, attending to things as if it were holy, right? that is part of mindfulness practices. So when I was talking about mindful eating before, or through meditation or mindfulness practices such as journaling, right? Sitting in silence, just aware of the things around you. See, when we have the opportunity to take in moments like that, the moments become more rich, more full, more abundant, because we start to notice more of what's going on. And so we're really able to appreciate that moment for what it is. And in turn, that moment can become holy to us, or full, abundant, full of life, right? So if Brahmacharya helps us walk closer to this idea of um, energy outside of ourselves, to this idea of source or God, whatever word you want to call it, then how can we practice more Brahmacharya to then regulate our energy and keep this connection to our highest self? Because as we were mentioning from the last full moon, we can either be living in our highest self or our ego self. And they're polar opposites, just like yin and yang, sun and moon. We're always faced with polarities in the universe. There is no such thing as one way, there's always an opposite. So when we're faced with these opposites, we have to learn how to find balance. And that sometimes means doing some deep work and figuring out where we're putting our energy, where it maybe doesn't belong, or maybe we could take it back and put it somewhere that's of more value to us. So I want to keep reading a few more passages out of this book because, oh my gosh, this is just so mind-blowing, some of the things that I read about the yamas and niyamas and just about the 8 limbs of yoga in general. So if you're new to the topic, please, I invite you to explore it more even after this workshop. So Deborah Adele goes on to say, we are here on this world in part to feel enjoyment and pleasure. If we are in the pleasure and not the addiction, we are practicing Brahmacharya. If we are feeding our mental stories and have moved past bodily comfort, we are in addiction and out of harmony with this guideline. Non-excess is not about non-enjoyment. I'm going to say that again. Non-excess is not about non-enjoyment, but instead, it actually is about enjoyment and pleasure in its fullest. The question before us is, are you eating the food, or is the food eating you? Are you doing the activity, or is the activity doing you? Can you enjoy pleasure without excess? And in answering these questions, we have to be able to discern between what the body needs in the moment and the story our mind is telling us. I don't know about you, but I personally have noticed that sugar, salt, and caffeine create more mind stories than lettuce does. These are Deborah's words still, but I can totally relate to that. And we must also be fearless in facing our sadness, grief, and disappointments without needing to soothe them with external gratifications. Right? So one last thing I want to share, because this just really hits home for me. But Deborah says, seeing with the eyes of holiness shifts how we act as well as how we see. There is an inbuilt need to pause and give thanks. There is an inbuilt need to open the heart and wonder. When gratitude and wonder sit in the heart, there is no need for excess. Seeing everything as holy brings a continuity to life. It grounds us in centeredness, whereas excess overdoes us, overextends us, and takes us away from ourselves. Seeing everything as sacred firmly roots us and firmly balances us. And I have found that when the sense of wonder leaves me, when everything becomes dull and ordinary, it is because I have kept too fast a pace for far too long. I've pushed past my own boundaries, and now I'm out of balance. It is time to rest. When I am rested, nothing is dull. Everything glows. Whether I take it as easy for a day or escape into the woods by myself, it's hard to give this rest to myself. There are 1,000,001 reasons why I can't. Can anyone else relate to that statement? Thinking of how many reasons we give ourselves why we can't do something that's good for us, why we can't, take off of work early to go catch the sunset, to shut the laptop early one night to get to bed on time, maybe to get a full night's rest, to wake up early so that you have time to meditate, to start your day slowly with mindfulness, to take a break halfway through the day, to go outside and get sunshine, nature, fresh air, to say no to someone when they're crossing a boundary or a line, right? It's easy to say that we can't do this because it feels uncomfortable or it's new. But part of energy moderation and Brahmacharya is learning how to sit in the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. And this is something I had to get really good at. Some of you know part of my story from overcoming addiction and my eating disorder. And I had to face energy moderation head on because I was someone that really, really, really loved things in excess. And I overindulged in many areas of my life for really a long time. And those tendencies and patterns started when I was in my childhood, and they just continued on and grew momentum and got larger and larger, and the problems just kept getting bigger and bigger. And eventually I was just hit with this brick wall of, I need to face this, or else I'm always going to be running from the feelings that I don't want to feel, the truths that I don't want to see. And I'm going to keep overindulging until I either hurt myself or create more trauma or hurt others around me, right? I mean, we get where we're going with this, right? And I know that my story is a little extreme. Some of you may not be able to relate to drug addiction, to codependency, um, to trauma that is maybe a little bit more dark or heavy, right? So for those of you that don't necessarily relate to those extreme versions of being out of balance, I know that we can all relate to wanting things in excess, whether it's sugar or buying things, especially from Amazon these days. It's so easy to just get something sent to your house in less than 24 hours, right? Working out in excess, working at your job in excess, right? Looking for love outside of yourself in excess. We've all been there in some way, shape, or form. So all of us can benefit from looking at our energy patterns, where we're putting our energy, and how we can pull the reins back in and find a little bit more balance. So I'm going to finish off this passage by Deborah, and this is where it really starts to hit home for me. She says, to continue, there are 1,000,001 reasons why I can't. My ego likes to feel important, and it doesn't feel very important when I'm resting. My ego also doesn't like the idea that life can go on without me, even if it's only for a few hours. I like to be where the action is. Besides, in this culture of constant activity, there's always so much that needs to be done. And yet, I am hungry to step outside of the habits of technology and the bombardment of stimulation and the routines that I have conveniently put in place for myself. I am hungry to learn from the silence and see if I am on track with my soul. I am hungry to tame the stimulation and pull back the indulgences. And I am hungry to do nothing and let that be more than enough. Resting rejuvenates my sense of mystery. In this simple act, I find my eyes are shifted to wonder, and my heart spontaneously bursts with songs of gratitude. Wow. I think we all just maybe need to take a deep breath after that one, because it's so easy to get wrapped up in this ego, this sense of, I have to keep going because A, B, C, X, Y, Z, this will happen if I don't. And we create these stories of like, what's going to fall apart if we take a break and take a rest and stop doing for once. And it's so hard to actually accept that we have a hard time slowing down and not doing something. That's why meditation is hard. That's why it can be challenging and frustrating, because we are not used to sitting still and doing nothing. And really, meditation is more than doing nothing. I hate to blanket it like that with that term, because meditation is about observing the thoughts and observing what comes up, right? So it's not that you're doing nothing, but it's perceived from the public eye as doing nothing. And our ego gets in the way of making the right choice for ourselves so that we don't fear that people will look at us and think that we're doing nothing. Well, that's the problem. This fear that we're going to be doing nothing, and that's what it's going to look like to everyone around us. And our ego is telling us that we can't look like we're doing nothing. We have to always look like we're doing something. We have to go, go, go and achieve and always do and always help and always give. And I mean, that's even prevalent in the yoga world itself, right? I see that so often. These beautiful souls in yoga that give so much of themselves without giving back to themselves in return. So it even happens with the most mindful of people, right? It's just a natural pattern and tendency that we have to constantly fight against. And that's what doing the self-reflection and that deep work can do. So I want to circle back around for just a moment and share my screen with the slides so that we can talk about Virgo once again, because I told you we'd get back to this, the idea of the Virgin. And so a lot of people think that the Virgin is like this good-natured, pure, does no wrong. Like we have this idea of the Virgin Mary maybe in our heads that pop up. But in fact, the Virgin actually represents someone that doesn't need a partner or something outside of herself to be whole and complete. That the Virgo or Virgin carries the strength and happiness to live fully, and not from a place of trauma or ego, but from this connection to the highest version of herself, right? So the idea of the Virgin is someone that is connected to their highest self, listening to their body's needs, their mind's needs, their spiritual needs, and that can keep themselves grounded in their heart and in their emotions, right? So I know we saw this slide on the last full moon circle, but I brought it back again because I think that I could probably look at this every day and still see something new in my life that comes out of it. But I'm going to read through these, and I want you to see which one resonates with you in your current situation right now in this moment. And this is a day-to-day thing that changes. So don't try to label yourself in one of these categories as if it's a constant or that it's always going to be this way, because we're constantly shifting back and forth between the two sides. And the whole idea is to get somewhere in this middle line here, where, I should have labeled this as balance or harmony, because that's really what we're trying to do. So are you creating your own reality, or are you a victim of your circumstances? Are you living in abundance? Do you feel like there's always enough? Or do you frequently feel like you're living in scarcity and that there's never enough and you can't possibly share or give or do anymore because you're out, you're completely depleted? Are you in harmony with the world? Or are you in competition? Are you happy? Or is it hard for you to connect to happiness? Do you feel confidence and radiance and connection with all that is? All that energy that's around you and within you? Or do you feel insecure and dull and disconnected from everything that could give you life, that could recharge you. So these questions are not to cause judgment or negative feelings towards yourself, because let me tell you, I can frequently see myself in this area over here in ego. And there's so many other ways we can figure out if we are. These are just a few examples. But when we're thinking more of I and as separate and as not connected, anything that takes us away from connection means that we're sitting more in ego. And it happens naturally. And it's through meditation, it's through mindfulness practices that we're able to see when we're over here in ego. And it also helps us to see clearly how to get back to our higher self. And so, with that, I'm going to send us back over to Anna, and she's going to share some more thoughts with you on everything that we've talked about so far.
Oh my goodness. First, I just have to say, I love the idea of you were taking with Brahmacharya and about like walking with your higher self, your highest self. That was just so beautifully said, because I know for me, with my own meditation practice, you can kind of start to becoming like two different people because you hear that voice all the time. And I know that it was easier for myself when I conceptualized the worry voice kind of like a child. And so I love that idea of my highest self walking my younger self through what I need to hear. And the beautiful thing about the highest self is that that is the self that is love and that therefore doesn't need love. When we are hungering, when we are wanting something, a lot of that stems from not feeling safe. And that not feeling safe comes from feeling that we believe we're here to fill a need for someone else. So this could be, are you uncomfortable when someone does something kind for you? Does it make you feel immediately like you owe them? Do you feel a power shift dynamic? And do you almost take it like, oh, now I need to do something? That could be an indicator that you're someone who has some feelings about love, that even if you want to believe in unconditional love, the love you believe towards yourself is conditional. And by starting to look at where our love is conditional, the self care practices are what we can bring in to start to give back to ourselves what wasn't given. Self care and self love is like the ultimate expression of rebellion in this society. We live in a world where the TV, computers, the apps, the people outside, they're all calling for your attention. They all want your energy. Money is energy too. You put energy in to acquire that. So, as we're talking about conserving our energy for our walk with our highest self, everything you're giving away, you can't put into your own passions. You can't put into your own journey. And so, you want to start thinking about, where am I leaking? Where is my fear of not being something to someone getting me in a situation where I'm putting energy out in a way that I don't want to take it? I have been recommending to all of my students the book, Women Who Run with Wolves. And one of the stories is about returning to the soul skin, returning home. And in this, it talks about how women, we have this need to spend time with just ourselves, to go inside and let that creative well upspring. But because in our society, we value productivity, we value being able to see someone's results, other people don't necessarily respect that alone time. And I thought that this was best explained in this passage. Oh, sorry, of course I lost it. So in the passage, it's talking about the healer archetype. And so the archetype is a way of seeing the world. But the thing about archetypes is that we start allowing archetype to be our inspiration. We forget that archetypes aren't real and we're real. When you're measuring yourself up against this image of perfection, you're always going to be failing. And so when we start to look at what are we actually measuring ourselves against, we realize that we've kind of set ourselves up to fail from the beginning. And so, can we approach this in a different way? The great healer archetype carries wisdom, goodness, knowing, caregiving, and all the other things associated with the healer. So it is good to be generous and kind and helpful like the great healer archetype, but only to a point. Beyond that, it exerts a hindering influence on our lives. Women's heal everything, fix everything compulsion is a major entrapment constructed by the requirements placed upon us by our own cultures, mainly pressures to prove that we are not just standing around taking up space and enjoying ourselves, but that we have redeemable value. In some parts of the world, it is fair to say, to prove that we have value and therefore should even be allowed to live. These pressures are introduced into our psyches when we are very young and unable to judge or resist them. They become law to us until we learn to challenge them. The cries of the suffering world cannot be answered by a single person all the time. We can only choose to respond to those that allow us to go home on a regular basis. Otherwise, our heart light dims to almost nothing. What the heart wishes to help is sometimes different from what the soul's resources be. If a woman values her soul skin, she will decide these matters according to how close she is to and how often she has been home. So if you heard that last sentence, what the heart wishes to help is something different from what the soul's resources are. That is what a meditation allows us to see. When we're caught up in the ego, when we're caught up in the need to be something for someone else, the need to be a perfect mother, the need to protect our children from having any harm, the need to be the coworker that can do everything and is always positive and that never is struggling, the need to never be a burden to someone. When we're so focused on what we need to do in order to feel comfortable, we aren't actually listening to what we need in the moment. And so I'd like to then pivot into what we need is self-care, but right now, what the culture is selling us is again perverting what our soul needs most to calm down. We have taken spirituality and we've made it about productivity. Raise your hand if you have heard about meditation so that you could do better at work, that you could accomplish more, show up better. Raise your hand if you have heard about doing, you chose to do yoga because it would give you a strong body and it would make you look good. Or you've seen someone on Instagram that can do a fancy pose and you want to do that pose because you think if you do that pose, you can be an athlete. Raise your hand if you've approached meditation because you believe that meditation will allow you to show you up better in your relationship, that maybe dynamics will be fixed, that okay, but do you see how it's taking a practice that's supposed to be about love, about expressing your soul, your creativity, your connection, your Brahmacharya, walking with God, walking with your higher self? You just made it about work. And that is what society is doing to us. The going on a long walk in nature, it's not about the science about how when you're under the trees, your body slows down and you shift into the parasympathetic nervous system. And then this allows blah, 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 blah. No, it's just about the feeling good and the love. It's okay to use science to help us understand spirituality and these different practices so that when we explain them, we can explain how they genuinely can be beneficial. That's okay. But we cannot use our self-care practices as a stick in which to beat ourselves with. Raise your hand if you're someone who has written down all your self-care that you'd like to get in a day. Maybe it was like, wake up early, meditate, drink hot water, do your yoga practice, do your meditation, and then you felt bad when you didn't do it. Why didn't you do it? You probably didn't do it because it became about doing. It wasn't about feeling good. It became about checking off a box. It became about proving your worth. I am worthy of this if I do my practice. I'm worthy of love in a relationship if I show up on the mat. I am worthy of a donut if I go on a run. And that's not true. We are worthy because of who we are. And that's what meditation allows us to do. We step into that space of quiet, of non judgment. And as things arise and we separate from them, we realize, oh my goodness, this is what everyone is going through. Everyone is going through this neurotic story in their head of trying to please or be things to other people. Or maybe they've given up and their heart has hardened and they've turned away. So, this is a PSA to all you beautiful souls to let yourself reconnect to your self care practices for you, not for what it's going to do in your life. The reason why nature is so restorative to us is because all it does is give and it takes nothing back. Think about how good you feel standing under a tree, under the sun, and the breeze is going, and it's that beautiful Florida weather where it's like 70 degrees out with a light breeze and the sun, and the birds are chirping, and everybody else is in a blizzard, and we're outside in shorts. How good that feels. You didn't do anything for that. You simply were there. You just showed up. That's why nature's so healing, because begin to see we are nature. We're part of the world around us. And so we too are not here to show up and be things for other people. We're simply here as an expression of love. There's a story about Gandhi. And Gandhi, as most people know, was a big spiritual healer that brought into India's independence. And there's a story of him having a rally for 10,000 people. And all these people showed up, and he turned to his advisors and he said, cancel. We have to cancel. And everyone around him in a flurry was freaking around. That's what we were talking about, that airy energy that has everybody going. They were saying, how can you do that? The 10,000 people, they're expecting you. And he said, no, it has to come from God. It has to come from the right place. It's not the right time. And that strength, that authenticity, that knowing that it's truly not about doing, it is about having integrity and what you say and what you practice, that is the power. And so thinking about what you've been doing for the last 2 months, we are done with February pretty much. We are starting March. I'd like you to think about some of the goals that have come up for you. And I'd like you to write down one goal, maybe your favorite goal or thing you wanted to manifest, and just write down what it is. And then below that, I would like you to write about why. And it doesn't matter what your why is. I know I'm talking so much about not proving our worth, but that's okay. If it's about proving something to you in this moment, let's just write this down and get it on paper. And then below your reason for why, if you were to never attain this goal, could you still love yourself? And just write yes or no right now. And then thinking of your body, bring your hand to the heart, bring the lower hand to the lower belly, let the belly soften into the hands. This is your body. This is the container that houses your dreams, your thoughts, your hurts, your triumphs. If you were to not change anything about your body, not an extra pound, not a wrinkle, the color of your hair, Can you still love yourself? And I'd like you to write down what the answer to that question is. And again, just like we remember that, like everything in nature that goes through a metamorphosis, whatever your answer is, don't judge. And it's okay. This can be part of your journey back to wholeness, to allowing those stories to fall away. And then I would like us all to think about one self-care commitment that they can make for a month. One, not five, not one with like a bunch of little subheadings underneath. One. We're setting ourselves up to succeed. We are being kind. Brahmacharya. We are regulating our energy. Pick one self-care practice you can do every single day. And I want you to write underneath it how this self-care practice is an expression of unconditional love. For mine will be dancing. I want to do a 5-minute dance party after work every day because I don't want to bring my work life home. And I feel so good afterwards, and I don't know why I don't do it. So 5 minutes, I can do that. Beautiful. Reason that this is so important is that if we're always caught up in the striving and the doing and the hunger for more and the need to prove, that when life gives us what we want, we won't even know how to enjoy it because we'll still be so focused on how we have to prove our worth again next. We don't have to stay in this perpetual state of worry that the shoe is about to drop, that all these good things that are coming aren't deserved. Instead, we can listen to the voice that's telling us we're not enough. We can smile at it. We can say, I see you, thank you, but I am. And every single time, this act of rebellion, this leads the way for everyone in your life, everyone you come across, to do the same thing. We all deserve to feel the inner strength and calm and assurance that Gandhi felt in doing what was right for him. Imagine the world if we all were doing what was best for us and allowing others for doing what's truly best for them. The amount of spaciousness and non-judgment and the world that we could create. And so I'd like us to end as we sing the sound of Om again one last time, that this sound also be a promise that for the next month, we will remember that our spirituality is not to be perverted for productivity. It is for us and for us to share when we're ready. So taking both hands to the heart, closing the eyes, and feeling yourself. Picturing the beautiful full moon outside, illuminating all of us, bathing us in her light, the catalyst that brought us together, the energy that surrounds us all in our intentions as we continue down this path of self-discovery, releasing the chains that bound us, or the illusions of the chains. First inhaling deeply in, exhaling through the mouth, singing our song of promise together. Inhale. Inhale in. I am so grateful for all of you You are my constant reminders not to let my own practices become about productivity, but to keep them what they're truly about, which is about love and connection and joy. As always, Katie and I will be staying on for some time. So if anyone would like to share an intention for the next month or anything that's come up, or just share and express, we are here, ears and hearts open for you. For anyone who needs to continue on with your night, I ask that you set aside 2 minutes to go outside and receive that unconditional love, basking in the glow under the moon of nature, and give yourself that gift for today. But for